Welcome to another edition of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. I'm your host, Femi Abebefe. As always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos, and it is officially Super Bowl week. And this past weekend, Michael, we didn't have any football, or we had the reimagined Pro Bowl games. I know you were glued to that Sunday afternoon.
No, I was not glued to that.
How was the day with no football?
I didn't watch one play. It was hard. I mean, although I would recommend, I was thinking about this. I was talking to somebody today. We were talking about programming. If you've ever not seen one of the great TV shows of all time, it's called Boss. It was on Stars. It only had 2 seasons with Kelsey Grammer. I would recommend that. That's in my top 5 of all time. Kelsey Grammer's incredible. He's the mayor of Chicago, Tom Kane. The opening speech that he gives at the beginning of it is beyond remarkable, just beyond remarkable. And so, for me, it would be like, that's going to be a lot of Sunday. I'm going to rewatch Boss, but I did not watch one play. I started to watch the 76ers play the Knicks. I gave out the Knicks and +4 on the show, and I knew that was going to cash. So I just paid attention to that. So that was it. But what else was it going to do? I mean,
there wasn't a whole lot to do. And oh, by the way, Michael is in Tampa right now to promote the book, The Football Done Right. We're all excited for that later on this year. So that's why he sounds a little bit different. Yeah,
I do sound different. And I want to thank the people at Raymond James, which I'm doing a speech for them. They've been so good to me and the book that I appreciate everything that they've done. So I'm here in Tampa for that. And, that's why I'm on the road. But I will be Wednesday. I will be in Phoenix on whatever the Radio Row, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then Saturday, Sunday, I'm going to be with you out there at the Circa. We're going to hang out.
There we go. You're hitting both deserts, Phoenix and then also Las Vegas, the better desert is what I like to call it here. I'll be here all week long. Not going to be making the trip to Radio Row, but I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun. Elliot, our producer, was telling me that I guess there was a Fogo de Chao that's right across from the convention center where the Radio Row is. So I don't know if you're a big Brazilian steakhouse guy, but
no, I've never been to that place. I've seen it, but I've never been. Is it good?
I've been there. I like it. I also like meat, so I guess that's kind of I'm biased clearly. But Brazilian steakhouses, I do recommend. I love them a lot. But you got to go. Make sure you bring your appetite because if you keep that thing on, because you have the little dot, and if you keep it on green, they're gonna keep bringing the meat. And it's chicken. Wow. You can get steak. You can get pork. Whatever you want, they got it. And you definitely might need to be wheeled out of there. At least I do whenever I go.
Yeah.
But it's all sorts of fun. Yesterday I didn't do a damn thing, man. I went out to lunch and did that. Then I came back. I did watch a little bit of that Sixers-Knicks game because I was on the TV. So I was like, all right, let me take in some of this. I watched a little bit of golf. And I watched, and maybe we'll have time to talk about it later on. I don't know. Did you know that the ESPN was doing the 30 for 30 on the 2000 Ravens team? So,
no, I did not.
So I watched that yesterday evening. That's how I spent my day. So and it was very reminiscent to what we'd seen in the Americas game, the one that the NFL Network always does for the Super Bowl champions and stuff. But there was just a more long range form of the storytelling, and obviously that team had a lot of personalities with Ray Lewis and Shannon Sharp and the late great Tony Siragusa, who unfortunately they actually taped all the interviews and did that stuff a month prior to him passing away last year. So he was very much a part of it, and it was kind of cool to get his perspective on it one last time, like his last kind of public outing before passing.
I need to watch that.
But yeah, it was really good. It was really good.
He was in the, and then you're going to have to squeeze in the Sopranos. I mean, Goose was in the Sopranos too. So no more excuses, fam. No more excuses.
We're going to squeeze it in. We're going to get it done this off season here because like you said, everybody's on my ass about it. So I'll make sure to deliver, and we'll have the Sopranos in 60 coming back here over the off season. But Michael, we got to get to the Super Bowl. It is Super Bowl week, and this is an interesting week because it's so much more than a football game, but the teams are going to try to keep it to being a football game as normal as possible. Both Kansas City and Philadelphia are in Arizona now. They arrived yesterday. They're going to do the Super Bowl opening night media session thing later this evening. That'll be kind of their big introduction. But just for those of us who are unaware and have never been a part of an organization that's been playing for a Super Bowl, what is this week like? What is the build up to it? And just now that you're going there, you have boots on the ground. How do you kind of control everything and all the hoopla that goes along with it?
You really need your leadership council to help you. And I think a really good book that I've read is Run to the Roar. It's about Paul. He is the Trinity squash coach. He's the winningest coach in all of college sports. I mean, he's squash at Trinity. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's enormously really popular. And he wrote something. We did a one-on-one interview with the Daily Coach, but he's tremendous. But his leadership council on his team is really good. I mean, he would send every day he's talking to his leadership council. Every day he's talking to the guys on his team. He's sending voicemails and texts and all that. I think this is the kind of week for that. You know, you want to make sure that the players don't lose sight of the main thing. The main thing is the game. Mm-hmm. And with veteran leadership, you got to kind of get the kids, the younger players, from not looking at the stars. Because this is a once-in-a-lifetime event, right? So you don't want to discourage them from experiencing the joy of being here, but you also got to reshift their focus to why they're there. So embrace the moment. And a lot of that is just staying in the moment. Like when it's media day, embrace media day. But when we go to work, when Wednesday through Friday or Saturday, then this is really what we're all about. I mean, Andy Reid's been here before. You know, the Eagles have been here as a team before. Sirianni hasn't. But I think that's going to be the key, is how do you focus it and then try to keep things as pretty much on the same routine as you possibly can. You know, start your meetings at the same time. You got a bus ride to go over to practice as opposed to just going downstairs and going outside. So you try to keep things as normal as you possibly can and get players to focus. But what you're doing is, so let's say during a normal week, you might have 100 reps to practice offensively, defensively. So this week, you're probably going to have 200 because you had last week where you could do some more practicing. So you're going to get a lot more reps. So you're going to try to keep the game plan simple, concise, where you're going to rely on execution, and you're going to drill that time and time again, which certainly helps.
It's interesting because I saw something that I think it was a tweet, or it might have been watching one of the daytime TV shows, but they said that the Chiefs have kind of constructed their meeting room area and have built it out to be as close as possible to their one back in Kansas City, just to try to keep everything the same. So even like little details like that of, all right, we want the meeting area. If the whiteboard is over here, we want it to be over here. If this is over here, we want the seating to be like this, to try to make this feel as normal as possible, because it's not normal. And that's the elephant in the room, is that you're in this, not foreign. I mean, they've been to Arizona before. They started their season in Arizona, but you're there for the entire week now with this Super Bowl lead up. So it's a little bit different than a normal lead up. In terms of the game planning, though, in the football side of things, they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. What is the difference in the first week, that week after the championship games on that Sunday, versus now this week with the whole build-up and practice coming up to the game this upcoming weekend?
I would say the first week is more mental. Introduce the game plan, get everybody on the same page, teach them what it's going to take to win the game. The second week is about execution, getting back to fundamentals, doing the things, pad level, come off the ball, be a little bit more physical, but keep your legs fresh, and try to build up to the game. So I think really that's kind of what it is. 1 week's mental, the next week's a little bit more physical. You certainly don't want to go overly physical, but you're going to need to get your timing back. You're going to need to get your pad level back. You're going to have the kind of when the game starts, you can't catch up. You want to start fast. Both teams have notoriously started fast. So I think that's going to be the key, is how do you balance that? How do you get that? And there's got to be a little bit of, look, it's no different than any game. It's a little bit like the movie Hickory, when he took the kids to that Butler Fieldhouse and he measured the court, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, look, it's 10 feet high. It's this, everything's the same. This is a game. It's all going to be the same. The elements around the game are different. Let's just focus on what is always the same. And I think that's how you get their attention.
Is it challenging to kind of rein guys, especially early in the week around this time, because they're doing the opening night thing tonight, and then Tuesday, maybe that's sort of an off day. I'm sure they'll have some sort of meetings or whatever. And then the practice starts Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, like a typical week. But we all know the families are involved. There's ticket stuff that guys are getting all sorted out. There's the nightlife aspect of it. As somebody who's visited the Scottsdale, Greater Phoenix area a number of times, you can find yourself a lot of trouble in that area. How do these teams kind of manage that? Like, are they putting like strict curfews in place? How do they go about kind of trying to get those? Oh, they don't do that. So.
No, the beginning of the week is going to be like a typical week. You're off Tuesday. I think now that they moved media up to the Monday night, the players have Tuesday off. And so all the ticket stuff's handled, right? Go out to dinner, enjoy your family. There's probably going to be a curfew. but usually sometimes the teams, the families can stay in the hotel room with the players. And then there's a family hotel the night before the game that, the players kind of condense it down. So, I mean, it's kind of try to keep things as normal as you can. Go out, take your family, enjoy it. But we start working on Wednesday. Here's going to be the drill. You're going to be over here at 6 a.m. We're going to do treatments. Everything's going to stay on the same schedule. Same thing for the coaches. The coaches are tinkering. They're looking. It's not about changing the game plan. Right. It's a little bit about the strategy. It's a little like a chess match. Right. Mm-hmm. So what you want to do is, and Shane Parrish on Farnham Street had this in his newsletter. I tweeted it out. The object is how do you avoid losing? And, don't be stupid. That's how you avoid losing. So what you want to be able to do is anticipate, if we do this, they're going to do that. And if we do that, they're going to do this. And then try to manufacture in-game during this week, taking time. If we start to get a lot of this, we think they're going to go here. And so we're going to need to adjust to that and do that as a coaching staff, as a defensive and offensive in the kicking game, and try to kind of blend the game, play the game in your mind during the free time that you have. So Wednesday, when it gets into situations, you can talk to the players about, hey, we're going to introduce this. We think this is what they're going to do. So alert for that. And when they do that, we're coming back with this. So there's a lot of scenarios that have to go through. And I think that's ultimately what happens. But a lot of this is preparing as if it were a chess match. So you're going to pick out the games you want to keep watching, and you want to get a rhythm of how he calls the game. Remember, these two teams played week 4 of 2021. Mm-hmm. The Chiefs had 8 possessions technically in the game. Okay, they had 8 possessions technically in the game, but really the last possession was a kneel down. So they had 7. They scored 6 touchdowns and had 1 interception. They never punted. They scored touchdowns on every single drive except for the one they threw the interception. They were 9 for 10 on third down. They controlled the game. Tyreek Hill was the best player on the field. I mean, they had 10 catches for 182 yards. They couldn't stop him. That game's not going to be relevant, but that game is relevant because it'll give you a chance to understand how they call the game, how they attacked you, and now as you try to use a perspective on seeing what's going to attack them. And I think that's what you try to do. You as a play caller, as anybody who's in charge of the game, you're basically studying it like former chess matches. Here's what happened. Here's what they did. Okay. Because when you make a move in chess, you never think about the novice makes a move in chess and thinks about what his next move is. Mm-hmm. The pro thinks about what's the danger in the move. Mm-hmm. Where are the danger when I make this move? Novice don't think like that. Mm-hmm. So that's how you have to approach this week. Where are the dangers in what we decide to do? And then how do we supplement those dangers? That's strategy.
I think that's a really well way to put that into words. I think because that's it's chess on grass is what football has become, and I think just seeing the game through that lens versus seeing it through like we did this, now let's go do this. It's no, we did this, so how can they attack us because we've gone ahead and did this? So I really like the way you put that. Some quick other notes with this Super Bowl here, because now we're in the Super Bowl week. The storylines are starting to bubble up here. Obviously, the Andy Reid Bowl being the big storyline, at least from the Chiefs' perspective. Andy, of course, coached many years in Philadelphia, now facing the Eagles with a chance to go ahead and win his second Super Bowl. Do you think that this Andy Reid Bowl storyline, is it a big deal? Is it a little deal? Or is it nothing at all?
I mean, I asked Howard Eskin on the show yesterday, on our show yesterday, the Lombardi line, and he kind of poo-pooed it. I think it's bigger than Eskin said. I think both teams have won Super Bowls. Both teams, I'm sure Andy felt like it was the right thing to do to leave. And Jeff Lurie has been record saying he probably waited a year too long to make that decision. Mm-hmm. Sometimes as a coach, you kind of run that gamut. I mean, Madden felt like 10 years was enough, right? And I think if you're in one place too long, I mean, that's one of the things Walsh always felt like. We talked about this in the Daily Coach today about how do you keep your edge? How do you keep that constant edge going on when you've kind of been delivering the same message? It's Pete Carroll. I give him credit. His approach in terms of rah-rah and that energy, is great in college, but when you don't have graduation, it can wear on the pro, that positivity. So when he changes the roster, it kind of helps him. I've often said this about Nick Saban. Nick Saban needs graduation. Like Nick Saban needs graduation. He needs, because he's going to grind the players down. Whereas Bill's grinding, but it's a different style of grinding. And both work. I'm not suggesting it doesn't, but graduation benefits Nick. And so when that message kind of wears thin, it may be time for a change. And I think that's what happened with Andy and the Eagles. And both have won, but there's still a little bit of, hey, I carried you. No, we carried you. It's that little bit who gets credit. And I think that's what's going to manifest. I think nobody will say it. But look, I think Andy Reid really wants to win this more than ever. He'll never admit it. And I think the Eagles want to prove that they can win it more than ever. But the Eagles, Jeff Lurie could go into the Hall of Fame if he wins this second one. There's a lot at stake here.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of stake. And these are competitive guys. Of course, they want to win, and it's a little extra being that it's your former organization there. You mentioned that Andy Reid wants to win it. Well, America doesn't want Andy Reid to win. I don't know if you caught this. I saw this tweet. It's a poll from Morning Consult. It showed that Americans want the Eagles to beat the Chiefs, and it was polling different generations of people, whether it was millennials or baby boomers or Gen X, and it was showing that of U.S. adults, 35% want the Eagles to win, 31% want the Chiefs to win. It polled sports fans, NFL fans, sports bettors. The only subsection of fans that wanted the Chiefs to win over the Eagles was Gen Z. The young kids, the young adults, the 20-somethings, and maybe they're big Patrick Mahomes fans, I'm guessing. But it's weird that the Chiefs have kind of now shifted into maybe being the villain role because they were the team that was seen as the chance to maybe dethrone New England and Brady and Belichick, and now here they are. They have made it to a third Super Bowl in 4 years. Now everybody wants to see them lose.
Yeah, I don't know if I pay much attention to that, because like every time I talk about Springsteen, people say, you're just some old white guy that likes Springsteen, you get with the times, right? And then I saw a pitch, and I've watched the last 3 concerts, and I saw a picture of Springsteen with his back to the audience, and it's filled with people. I mean, it's enormous, and everyone's packed. Every arena's packed, and I'm saying, yeah, you know what? Maybe I am some old white guy, but there's a lot of us dinosaurs out here, so like, I don't know if any of those polls make any sense. Like, I don't know. Like I get it. Yeah, it's my generation. I get that. But there's a lot of people from that there, just like good things don't ever come to an end. I mean, the Steeler uniform should never die. Like great things have a shelf life. And that's why people get upset with the Chiefs, because they're worried about their shelf life. They're worried they're going to go on and we got to deal with Mahomes for another year and they're going to win again. Whereas if the Eagles win, maybe, Jalen Hurts gets, paid too much money and they blow all that. So I kind of get that sense. That's what I would say.
I mean, it's the same thing that happened with New England. I mean, the first year when they won the Super Bowl in 2001, everyone was rooting for them. And then I think it was probably mixed that when they beat the Panthers, it was probably mixed in. But that by the time you get to that third one, when you're facing the Eagles and Jack, everyone's like, get out of here.
Yeah, we've seen enough of you. Now they're cheating. Like, they got to get them out of here.
It's like, we're sick of you. And then don't even get to 2007 when they were undefeated all the way up until losing to the Giants. Everybody was rooting for the New York Giants in that Super Bowl. So I think it's people just get sick of greatness, and that's what we can all see on the horizon with Mahomes and the Chiefs. It's going to be like this for the next 10, 12, 15 years. So get used to it. Final thought here, the Kelsey Bowl as well. Jason Kelsey, all-pro center for the Philadelphia Eagles. They have Travis Kelsey, all-pro tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Do you think the Kelsey brothers are the best brother duo in league history?
Well, I mean, look, I would say I got to think about that. I haven't really given that much study, but certainly, I mean, the Gogolak, the kickers, they can't certainly. How about the bar kickers? I mean, there were kickers that were brothers, right?
the Grammaticas.
I mean, Darren Sharper's in prison now for horrendous crimes that he committed, but Jamie Sharper, those two guys were good players, not to the level that these two, but both of those were good players. The Sharper family were good players now. I'm trying to think who else was in that category.
Well, I was thinking like the Sharp brothers, Shannon Sharp and Sterling Sharp.
Yeah, there you go.
They were really good players.
I mean, both guys should be in the Hall of Fame. Now, I'm sure both Kelseys are going to get in the Hall of Fame. I mean, but to me, the most ridiculous guy who's not in the Hall of Fame, if you were to ask me a peek sneak at my book, Football Done Right, the most ridiculous guy to not be in the Hall of Fame, and I make a huge, huge campaign for him in my book, is Sterling Sharp.
Yeah, and
it's Sterling Sharp. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous he's overlooked. It's ridiculous that we put Boselli in on a short career, and we ignore Shannon Sharp because he had Sterling Sharp because he had a neck injury. One guy had a short career. It's okay. This guy, not so good. And played with Don Majkowski for a while before he got to Favre. Could you imagine what his numbers would have been with Favre?
It's ridiculous.
For the longer period. So, yeah, I would say the Sharp brothers certainly are contemporaries.
Yeah, Sterling Sharp, and for those of you who don't remember Sterling Sharp, 3-time All-Pro first team, 1989, 92, 93. I mean, other than Jerry Rice, he was seen as the best receiver in football. He was that good.
It was unbelievable. I mean, and his touchdown, I think I have this in the book. His touchdown to catch ratio was like 7.8. Like his touchdowns for that short career matches some of the guys that are in over a long career. I mean, the guy if you're going to put a lot of receivers in the Hall of Fame, which I think the reason they get in the Hall of Fame is because people look at their numbers. But if you're going to put all these receivers in, you better make goddamn sure their catch to touchdown ratio is high. I mean, Paul Warfield was at every 5 catches, he was in the end zone. Randy Moss, it's the same way. Every time he caught the ball, he's in the end zone. Like, you got to have, catching the ball and getting it in the end zone are two of the most important things. You got to catch, but when guys score, that's what the Hall of Fame is. I saw on Pro Football Talk the other day where he's arguing for levels of the Hall of Fame. That's what my whole book's about. Is that he's arguing for it now. I mean, I wrote it, so he won't get mentioned in Pro Football Talk. But I mean, but I wrote it. There's levels of these players.
No, there most definitely is levels. We'd be remiss, of course, if we didn't mention the Manning brothers, who might be the first family of football. Yeah. But I mean, here's my thing.
It's hard to beat them.
Yeah, it's hard to beat them, but I mean, I think there's only one Hall of Famer in that family, in my opinion. Yeah. I don't think the younger one is. He's gonna get in, but I don't even want to.
He's gonna get in, but. I mean, look, I agree with you. He played well in big games. There's no denying that. Mm-hmm. There's no denying that. He played too long, but he played well in big games. But he's going to. I mean, they're going to do everything in their. I mean, because they're going to do everything in their power to get him in.
Yeah.
When there's some other quarterbacks that from different eras that haven't been in. But those guys in the past, people just ignore them. Mm-hmm. They just ignore them. They don't realize how good they are. Like, people thinking Johnny Unitas couldn't play today. That's absurd. Johnny Unitas was Peyton Manning before Peyton Manning. He was Peyton Manning before. Remember, quarterbacks that are quick-minded are better than quarterbacks that are quick-footed.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. Final note on the Super Bowl, though, the Chiefs wide receiver issue, McCole Hardman, placed on IR, so he will not play on Sunday. We'll see what happens with Kadarius Toney and Juju Smith-Schuster, but I'm sure we'll have more clarity on that when we do the episode coming up later on this week. But, Michael, let's take our first break here on the pod, and we'll get some of the news and notes from around the league. All right, let's get to some news and notes from around the league. Obviously, no games that were played this past weekend other than the Pro Bowl games, if you want to call that a football. But we did see a couple of NFLers over at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am on the PGA Tour, one of them being Aaron Rodgers, the former 4-time MVP out there working on his golf game. And he was asked, because there was a little bit of a weather delay on Sunday that ended up pushing it all the way until Monday when they finally finished. But he was asked on Sunday.
I think it was Saturday. The weather delay was Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday. I'm sorry. Saturday was the weather delay. And during that delay, he was asked about kind of what's been the chatter out there on the course about maybe his next team. Here's what he had to say when he spoke with CBS there on their PGA coverage.
Say that the predominant team that we hear as we're walking is Raiders. A lot of Raider fans are encouraging me. A lot of Devontae misses you comments. So we're having some fun with it. It's a great, great event for the fans to come out here, and hopefully we can get back on the course.
You see the smile on his face? He loves being wooed, man. I'm telling you. He loves it. The Raiders fans want him. They've moved from Brady to Rodgers.
The way this is acting, this is like, hey, does that look like a guy who's not going to play football next year? Does that sound like a guy who's not going to play? Look, if you weren't going to play football next year, wouldn't you say, wait, but hold on. There's no sense. I already made up my mind up if I'm playing, right? I think to me, just reading the tea leaves, I would say that sounds like a guy who wants to play football, and he should play football next year. He's too good. He's not done. His career's not over. Now where he goes, I don't know. I mean, certainly if you've never been to Pebble, that's an incredible venue down there, and it's the Bay Area. It's south of the Bay Area, so there's a lot of Oakland Raider fans down there. I used to walk that course. I'd go down there every year and hang out I love, those are the best trips. Millie and I would go down there every year and hang out and walk the course. Sometimes Belichick would play. I would walk in it. And, it was incredible. When it's a nice day down there, it's like one of the greatest places to ever go. And, I was down there one time. I was walking the course with Belichick and my cell phone rings. And, of course, it's Al Davis. And he's like, do you realize that fucking Rome is burning and you're walking down there? I'm like, I didn't know Rome was burning. I had no idea Rome was burning. I'm just here. Like, I'm 2 hours away. I'll be home in a minute if you need me. Oh, fuck, Rome's burning. You got no time for this. So, can you imagine that? I was literally in the middle of the course,
Just having a nice stroll.
A nice stroll. Fucking Rome is burning. I didn't know. I don't have a hose down here with me. I can't put out that fire in Rome. But I'll tell you, there's probably good pizza. Check it out. So, I don't know. Look, I think the market will heat up for Carr. I don't see, maybe I'm wrong. I don't see the Raiders getting a day 2 draft choice for Carr. They're not going to get day 1. But 2 and a 3, I don't see that. So I think a 4 maybe. But it sounds like there's teams interested. And so that'll clear the cap. And then, to me, the Rodgers thing isn't, are you playing, is how long do you want to play? Mm-hmm. If I trade for you, am I getting 3 years out of you or am I getting 1? And you got to kind of give me an answer, or else what am I doing?
Which team do you think is best equipped to bring him in, even if it's just for one season? Would it be the Jets? Would it be the Raiders? Who do you think would be best served? Even if it was Rodgers said, all right, I'm going to play 2023, and then I'm going to figure out my life after that. Which team is best equipped to bring that on?
Well, I think the one for Rodgers, the one he's the most comfortable with. He's run one offense. He had McCarthy for all those years. That's West Coast. Mm-hmm. That's day 1 West Coast install, right? So he's had that. Then LaFleur comes in, which is a combination of West Coast, but some more Kyle Shanahan influence. You didn't see much of a lot of boots because Rodgers doesn't want to turn his back to the formation on hard play action. You didn't see a lot of that. So I would suspect terminology is critical. Remember when Brett Favre went to the Jets and Brian Schottenheimer was his coach. Schottenheimer was from the digit system, which is 436. That tells the receiver to run a 4. It's the 3 route, the 6. And then the formations are different. Whereas in the West Coast, it's more of a verbiage. 20 bingo cross. All these terminology that goes to it. So So I think to me, the terminology would be what he's most comfortable with. And because when a player changes systems, it's really hard. So
then people will hear that and then probably connect the dots to the New York Jets with Nathaniel Hackett being there since the two were together in Green Bay.
Right. That would be, and then I think also, if he's going to change, he wants to go somewhere where he's got a good line. He's going to be a pro personnel director. He's going to look at his line, and then he's going to look at I don't know what he thinks of. How many people can take credit for Rodgers' great play in Green Bay, but between LaFleur and Hackett? How many can we get? Is there enough meat on that bone to get everybody credit? They couldn't win a playoff game up there with them. They lost 2 home playoff games up there. So, I don't know. Whereas I would think the relationship with Davante Adams certainly would help the Raiders if that's what he wants to do, where Adams had no problem adapting to the system. So if Adams adapts to that system, the Josh McDaniels system, then maybe, you would think Rodgers would. And one thing about the McDaniels system, they're going to do what Rodgers does well, right? They're going to give him the liberty to do it. It's going to be different. It'll be an adjustment for him, though.
And Rodgers being a West Coast guy, maybe he wants to come out here. He's not going to the Bay Area, but Vegas isn't too far from the Bay Area.
Look, and it's tax free. It's the other appeal. It's tax free.
It's very nice.
Where you go to New York, so New York, New York's they're going to get you on all of them, right? They're going to get you. Don't think players don't think like that.
Yeah.
You got that tax burden is huge in California for players, and it's huge in New Jersey for players and New York.
Maybe that's why Colt Knost on the PGA broadcast was there saying Rodgers would look nice with a star on his helmet if he wants to come down to Texas and play for the Cowboys. But I digress. That's neither here nor there.
You and Dave Ross will have to kick in for that. And our man, Goulet.
I don't know if I want to put money in for Aaron Rodgers. He's a hell of a player, but that might be asking a little much from me. Derek Carr, though, is the other side of that coin there for the Raiders. Obviously, the two have split up. Carr has been granted permission by the Raiders to speak with other teams interested in trading for him that have also agreed to compensation with Las Vegas. Now, you mentioned that you think it's going to be a day 3 pick, not quite a second or a third round pick in day number 2. There's this deadline, though, that's lingering here, the February 15th deadline for the guarantees of the contract. Do you think we see something
March
done?
3rd deadline. I thought it was March 3rd deadline. I thought it was the third day of the league year.
So I believe I read a tweet. It said Carr says he will not extend the February 15th deadline for future contract guarantees. So I'm not sure if that means then if it goes towards the March 3rd thing or if it's, I'll have to get clarification on that.
Well, you can't, first of all, the league year you can't trade a player until the league year opens up.
But so they could agree to a trade, correct? But they wouldn't. Right. It wouldn't be official.
But that wouldn't. But if he goes past that 50, that's a self-imposed deadline by Carr and maybe the Raiders. I don't know. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me because the March 3rd is when his guarantees kick in.
Gotcha.
They don't kick in February. Those guarantees don't kick in until the league year begins. So you could say the second, and sometimes you don't know when the league year is going to be. So you frame it in a contract, the second day of the league year, the third day of the league year. You don't know what day that is when you do the contract because they change the day of the league year. I think that's a self-imposed one. To me, I say a Saturday pick, but there may be competition. And if there's competition and he's good to go to either place, I mean, the contract's going to determine this too, right? Who's got an appetite to pay $40 million for 3 years? Because that's what he's going to get. He's going to get $120 million over the next 3 years. Who's going to pay that? I heard the Saints, Carolina, the Tampa Bay Bucks. I mean, look, you kind of have a sense, I would think that some teams would want to pay that because, look, he's got proven numbers. Yeah. And he'll make a team better. I mean, there's no doubt, he's kind of gone through it, and it doesn't mean his career ends in Las Vegas. It just means sometimes change is good for players too, right? We talked about that with coaches in an earlier block. So I could see that. I mean, but I think to me, that has to be a self-imposed deadline that they're going to agree to a deal with somebody.
So if you were the odds maker, you would set it that Carr's likely going to go to the NFC South because you mentioned the 3 teams. There was Saints, Panthers, and the Bucks. So one of those 3 might be interested. Okay.
I would the one that if I were Carr, the one I'd want to go to are the Saints because their offensive line, or I'd go to Carolina. I'd go wherever the best offensive line was. Yeah,
and the warm weather climate. We know there's all the stats about Carr and the cold.
Carolina's got good receivers. New Orleans has good receivers. They got Kamara. I would go New Orleans, Carolina, and that. Now, I mean, would he work with Frank Wright? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Pete Carmichael there, has been with Breeze, so they kind of know each other. I mean, I'm sure he could be very comfortable there. And remember, Dennis Allen, I believe Dennis Allen was with him as a coach, right?
I think they had a little bit of crossover here. Let me make sure to look it up.
Yeah, I think they did. I'm trying to remember. I think they had to.
Because, Allen, he was the head coach of the Raiders. So, 2012 to 2014. So I believe it was Carr's rookie year was Dennis Allen's last year with the Raiders.
And he got fired in season. Didn't he get fired?
I believe so.
Yeah, so, I mean, but at least he went through the process with them, and he knows the kid. Now, they didn't play very well. That was one of the teams that really shut down the Raiders. I would say the second Chief game was not a good game for the Raiders, but that was Stidham, and that game, the Saint game, the Saints just shut down the Raiders completely. Dennis Allen had a hell of a job in that game. Yeah, no,
Dennis Allen, actually, he was fired in late September. Of 2014. So he was an early season kind of hot seat guy. Team gets off to a bad start once again. Then he was dismissed as the head coach of the Raiders. The head coach of the Denver Broncos was introduced today. Sean Payton met with the Denver media earlier this morning, and he had interesting stuff to say. He talked about how ownership was paramount for him in making his decision. But I thought this was an interesting quote that he said, because he was asked about Russell Wilson's performance team having access to the facility last year. And he said, quote, "That's foreign to me. That's not going to take place here. I'm not familiar with it, but our staff will be here. Our players will be here, and that'll be it," is what he says.
Well, I think he's going to make sure that, there's not entitlement. I mean, you got to have to peel back the entitlement. Where do you see the press conference for whoever gets the Arizona job? I mean, how's that going to get handled? The first question is going to be, how are we going to handle the mayor? I mean, you can say you love the mayor. How are we handling the mayor? So, I mean, Sean, there's a sheriff in town, and Sean just got, how many years on a contract and a lot of money? Yeah. That's what when the coaches' salaries have to stay within proportion to the players' salaries, because if it's too easy to fire the coach, the players have too much control. A little bit what's happened in the NBA. I mean, when Doc Rivers went back to the Sixers, my sense was, well, at least now with them having some prestige to his name, Hall of Fame code or whatever, they're paying him a ton of money. They just can't give in to Simmons or Embiid, right? He's going to have some clout. I think there goes a lot to that.
Payton's going to interview both Brian Flores and Sean Desai for their defensive coordinator position. Ejiro Evero, the coordinator there last year, ended up taking the Carolina Panthers job. But a lot of this press conference was they were asking about Russell Wilson, I think, because that's what everybody thinks about when they see Sean Payton get hired. Can he fix Russell Wilson after what we've seen over the last couple of years? And this is what Payton had to say on building the offense around Wilson. Quote, "I was taught early on, what is it that they do well, and let's have them do those things. None of us want to be at a karaoke bar with a song we don't know the words to, so how do we get them comfortable and highlight their strengths?"
Yeah, I mean, that's Sean. I mean, that's any great offensive coach. The figuring out now, what is he going to be good at? And I mean, he's been in the West Coast. We've been, every time we turn around, we've been trying to we got to fire this guy, fire that guy. To me, Sean's going to run it. He's going to have a better balance of a run game, and the quarterback's going to have to execute what he wants him to do. And when he doesn't do that, he's going to hear it from him. So, yeah, I fully expect him to be a West Coast kind of spray the ball. But he's going to have to show he can move around in the pocket, and he's willing to step up in the pocket. A lot of times these guys that don't want to get hit anymore, Femi, what they do is they don't vertically work the pocket. So like when we watch this game this weekend, one of the key things in this game this weekend is the Chiefs have to take their two ends like the 49ers did and push the pocket inside, push the tackles, the defensive end, and push the offensive tackles and never get past them. And as soon as they get to the same level as the quarterback, they have to work inside. And the defensive linemen have to push inside. So it forces the quarterback to not vertically walk up into the pocket, which Purdy didn't do. When you watch Purdy get hurt, if Purdy would have walked vertically up into the pocket, then Riddick would have never hit him. But he didn't really have enough feel and experience to vertically work that pocket, what they call climb the ladder.
Yeah.
And so Wilson never wants to climb the ladder. What does he do? He steps up and runs out. And you can't do that if you're going to play for Payton.
Well, wouldn't you say that that's kind of the situation with shorter quarterbacks? Like Russell Wilson, like he's a shorter guy. Brock Purdy, he's a shorter guy. Baker Mayfield, who we see run to his right all the time, another one of those shorter guys. Those shorter quarterbacks, Breeze was the rarity who you would see kind of navigate those passing lanes somehow, some way, only being about 6 feet tall. But a lot of these short guys, they definitely retreat because they're just trying to see over these big offensive linemen.
Right, and Sean did a great job of always having good guards in there when he played for the Saints. So Breeze had kind of the pocket was set inside out, not outside in, right? And so that's what you have to do. But the quarterback's got to vertically work before he works out. And sometimes these guys, they just want to get out. And that's going to be the key to the game against the Chiefs is how they rush Jalen Hurts, but also the key to Russell Wilson. Will he vertically work the pocket? Like if Purdy would have just moved up, I mean, he's got a receiver. He's got Ayuk wide open. All he's got to do is just take a step and bang it. Brady, that's why Brady, he never really was worried about ends on the edges because he would step up. Where Brady always was like, okay, if you're coming at me and I can't step up, if I can't climb the ladder, I'm in trouble. So when you're watching an older quarterback, and especially an older quarterback whose yards per attempt has gone down, you're basically looking for, does he climb the pocket? Wilson doesn't.
We'll talk more about coaching on the other side here because there's still two head coaching vacancies, one in Indianapolis, one in Arizona. What's the latest on those? We'll discuss it here on the GM Shuffle. All right, we still have a couple of head coaching vacancies here in the National Football League as it's Super Bowl week, and I'm surprised to even say that there's still two spots that are open, the Arizona Cardinals and the Indianapolis Colts. Colts, though, we've heard that they interviewed Eagles offensive coordinator Shane Steichen this past Saturday. I know they also interviewed defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, Aaron Glenn, earlier. But they're now going to this kind of third round of interviews here, which to me on the outside seems a little strange. But, Michael, you think that this might be something that's no stone unturned from Irsay, Ballard, and that Colts crew?
Oh, well, we wrote about this for the Daily Coach a couple months ago, probably in the fall, where there's this procedure where you interview 10 people, right? And from those 10 people, you pick 3 that you like. and then you bring those 3 back. And then once you figure out who those 3 are that you like, you then try to interview 5 different people from another that weren't on the original list. Because as you keep interviewing people, you keep learning more about yourself and what you're doing. And then when you get to that final 3, you really know kind of where you are. And now it gives you a chance to maybe we need to revisit and bring somebody else in for the final one. I'm not sure they're doing that, but the 3-step process allows you to dig deeper. It's a little bit like, Joan Didion, when she talks about writing, the famous author who, if you've ever read her books, the White Album and all that stuff, the Slouching for Bethlehem, she's an incredible writer. But one of the things I think that's really good is what she says is, when I sit down with the blank piece of paper, I don't know where I'm going, so I start writing, and the writing takes me to where I want to go. Well, I think part of these interview process, it takes you somewhere. Now, eventually you got to make a decision. So if they come out and they're going to interview 3 more people and we know who they are, then they're open-minded. If they come back and say we're probably not, then probably means that Steichen's got the job and they just don't want to announce it. They don't want to announce anything during the week of the Super Bowl. Or they're just going to give it to Saturday. I mean, one of those 3 things, right? So, I think it's going to be, I thought we would hear something today. I think they told candidates that they would kind of come to a 3rd round. They have talked about this 3rd round. So I haven't heard any names today as I've traveled. So I don't know if you've heard anything on this job, but I think to me, if they want Steichen, he's not going anywhere. He's not involved in Arizona. So you're not going to lose him. So bring back the other guys you want and interview him on Monday if you want to hire him for the 3rd. You got plenty of time.
Yeah, Adam Schefter over the weekend said the Colts might not name a head coach until later this week or even after the Super Bowl. After the Super Bowl, even that little hint in there almost leads me to believe that it might be Steichen there of the Eagles, because he's got the game that he's going to take care of this weekend, and then maybe afterwards, Monday or Tuesday after the Super Bowl, you might hear Eagles offensive coordinator Shane Steichen to be the next Colts head coach. That's where I would guess this goes, but I mean, I guess with Irsay, you never know. He could be a wild card, and he could make Saturday the coach. Who knows? That'd be great for content. Might not be great for Colts fans. The Cardinals.
Elliot, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Elliot, we send our condolences in advance. The Cardinals' job, though, is down to 3 candidates reportedly: Steelers assistant coach Brian Flores, Giants offensive coordinator Mike Kafka, and then Bengals defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo. What's the latest that you're hearing here in Arizona?
Well, I think they won't have a coach until after the Super Bowl for sure, but not because of they're interviewing somebody in the game. I don't think they're interviewing Anarumo till Friday. I think he's coming back out there. It's interesting. They have 2 defensive coaches and an offensive coach. Yeah. So, that's good. That's interesting. And this is the 2nd round for each one of these guys. So I've heard Kafka's done a really good job. I'm happy that Lou Anarumo's getting an opportunity. I think he's got a really good chance to I think he's a really good coach who's, one of the things about when you work for the Bengals, and people read about this in my book, Football Done Right, the way that Paul Brown sets up the organization, which Mike Brown does as well, is the coaches have a lot of say in the draft. It's a college program. And especially the defensive coordinator, when Zimmer was there or Paul Gunther were there, they kind of ran the draft for the defense, right? And so from a team building standpoint, that can really benefit you as you go to your next job. It helped Bill Walsh. I mean, he knew what he wanted when he went to the next job based on what he did in Cincinnati. I'm not sure it works all the time because when you leave that program and you go, then all of a sudden the system changes and now all these players may not fit. So, but I do think that he's had that team building background, which certainly would help. Flores has the Patriot team building background, and Kafka, smart guy, been around Andy Reid. So I'd be interested to see. I mean, I think those are 3 really good names. I think the guy that it'll be interesting how what Brian had learned from his experience in Miami, and then where you feel comfortable with Anarumo. I wouldn't be worried about who's going to be the offense coordinator if it's Flores or Lou. I wouldn't be worried about who's going to be the defense coordinator. I think you can find the coaches, because the riddle's going to be in Arizona is not what offense we run, is how do we make the quarterback better.
Yeah, and that's a tough job because the quarterback is probably not going to be playing in the early portion of 2023, maybe not at all during the season based on when he tore his ACL here. Flores does have the connection though with Monty Ossenfort, who came from Tennessee but also worked in New England. He came over with John Robinson. Yeah, so they have that connection of the Patriot way and at least having that sort of alignment, so that would make sense there. But yeah, that's a job that we'll see maybe later this week or after the Super Bowl who ends up taking it. The new offensive coordinator, I should say, Michael, for the Dallas Cowboys is a guy that you predicted just a short couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure why you didn't tweet this out there with it like all the other insiders in the National Football League, but Brian Schottenheimer is going to be the new OC with Mike McCarthy calling the plays in Dallas. To me, it sounds like Jerry's saying, all right, McCarthy, this is your chance. Like this is the year. Go make Dak Prescott better. You wanted your guy. You got your guy. And now go make it work here. How do you think Schottenheimer's going to kind of work in with this with McCarthy now?
I think most people in the world think that rich people don't care about money. Okay? I think when you become a billionaire, our perception of billionaires is that billionaires don't care about money. They've got so much they don't care. And that's completely wrong. Okay? So Jerry is very wealthy. There was a time where Jerry couldn't even heat the building in Valley Ranch. Literally, when he first bought the team, literally, we went down there to practice, and I was working for the Cleveland Browns. We went down there to practice. We had a practice there, and he had closed half the building in Valley Ranch because he couldn't afford to heat it.
Wow.
He was leveraged to the hilt. And he closed the building. We were practicing there. Jimmy was the coach. He got Apex to pay for Jimmy. So the reason for that story and the reason for about billionaires is Jerry's sitting there paying Dan Quinn $4.5 million, let's say, and he's paying Mike. So let's say he's paying him $9 million. So he's got $14 million in two coaches. Does he really want to pay another $3 million for an offensive coordinator? Does he really want to pay another $2 million for this? I think Jerry's sitting there saying, like, how much money do I need to spend on all these coaches? So, okay, Mike, you're going to call plays. What do you need to make yourself the best play caller? Okay, you want Brian Schottenheimer to be your coordinator? Let him organize shit for you. Let him get the meetings, run the meetings. I got no problem doing that. I'm not paying him like I was paying Kellen Moore, but I'll do that. He's not the play caller you are. I don't have to pay him as much. I think that's what this is about. I think that once Quinn came back for that deal, I think Jerry looked at his coaching budget and said, wow, this is completely ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is way too much. I'm spending all this money on coaches. And so they got rid of a bunch of coaches the contracts were up, and I'm sure he's going to get his budget in. Does this mean Jerry doesn't value winning as much? No. I think what he values is to be fiscally responsible, and he don't want to waste money. And I think that was my whole point when he hired McCarthy. Why are you paying McCarthy $9-10 million to be the head coach and not making him call plays? Right? Like, if you're going to make him the head coach, then he should be calling plays. He's just standing there holding the clipboard. What are you getting out of this? It has to be economically feasible. And so Brian fits that perfectly. Brian and Mike go back a long way. Mike worked for Marty, Brian's father. So they have that relationship. They know each other. Even though this is a little misnomer, they're from different systems. Brian's from the Zampese numerical system. McCarthy's from the West Coast system. But I'm sure they blended themselves together because usually that all happens. And I think that's what we'll see.
That is really interesting because I'm sure Jerry is also thinking, like, why would I be paying upwards of $18 million a year for coaching when we can't even get to the damn NFC title game? Like that's got to go through his head as well.
Most people confuse being fiscally responsible for being cheap. It's not. Like I think Mike Brown is fiscally responsible. I don't think Mike Brown's cheap. Everybody would say Mike Brown's cheap. I don't think Mike Brown's cheap. I think if you talk to any coaches who work for the Bengals, he takes good care of his coaches. He takes good care of his people. I don't think he wastes money. And I think that Jerry doesn't want to waste money either. I mean, Jerry's sitting there. He's got this, yeah. Does he want a helicopter? Yeah. Does he need a nice yacht? Yeah. All that shit he's got. But at some point, sometimes too many people in an organization make it harder. And I think he just has to get control of it. And I think he did that. And so for me, I think ultimately, I think that's a good, smart move for him. I think that's something he needed to do. And I think he certainly can do it, and he'll get better. And at least he gets his head coach to call the plays.
Yeah. Who's the cheapest owner?
Well, they're not cheap anymore. I mean, they're not cheap anymore, really. Okay. When you look at them, they're really not cheap because they don't have to be cheap. They don't have to be cheap. So they just have to be. They have to be. They're making so much money. I mean, these guys all have airplanes. I mean, they're flying people left and right. They don't even mind the gas, the money for the flights. I just think, to me, that there was a time where there were cheap owners. They were really cutting down. I mean, like when I worked at the Raiders, we would spend whatever it took to sign Charles Wilson, but to get Charles Woodson, get office supplies, fuck that. Carpet in the building? No chance. We got no carpet. Got no money for carpet. Are you kidding me?
You're putting coins into the vending machine?
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Also, you're going to add something.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think when you break it down, I was reading Paul. His name is Paul Asasante, and wonderful book. And I was reading, I was making notes of it, and he had a great thing. Is that for them? He talked about a little bit what we talked about with Sean Payton. He said the greatest limitations of any coach or teacher is the tendency to teach the game the way they played it. And so I think that part of that is, as a coach, you have to evolve and you have to change. And so Sean's, he played at Eastern Illinois and McCarthy. You got to evolve the game to not how you played it, but how it's being played now. And I think some of that is what coaches need to do. I think by him and Schottenheimer both being from different systems, I think that'll help them.
Let's hope it helps them. That's what I'm hoping going into next year with the Dallas Cowboys. We'd mentioned earlier that Ejiro Evero, the Broncos defensive coordinator, is now going to join Frank Reich in Carolina. What do you think? What does that do for you with this Panthers team? It seems like this is a pretty good staff that they're putting together over there in Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean, look, James Campen's one of the best line coaches in the league. What he did with that offensive line was really good. Chris Tabor, the special team in Carolina was really good. I think they were 7th in the league. That I don't want us to derail ourselves because we're going to break this game down on Thursday to detail. But these are the 2 worst special teams in all of football.
Wow.
The Chiefs and the Eagles. The Chiefs are the worst special teams in the league. Everybody would know that. According to Rick Goslin's numbers, they're the worst special teams in the league, and the Eagles are 31st.
Oh my.
So, but Tabor did a really good job. So that they got a great offensive line coach, great special teams coach. Now they get a defensive coordinator who's going to be more adaptive to the system of defense that Vic ran, which I think certainly will help them.
No, I mean that's interesting that we have the 2 of the worst special teams units in the Super Bowl, but I guess they also had pretty good offenses, and on the Eagles' case, offense and defense.
They were just looking for clean exchanges. I mean, Andy's just looking for. But look, let's face it: the 29-yard return won the game for him against Cincinnati. Of course, punting the ball down the middle didn't help either, and we won't go there.
No, we don't need to get into that. Let's take our final break. We'll do some fun topics on the other side. This is the GM Shuffle. All right, Michael, before we get out of here, let's run through some other news and notes from around the league, just some fun topics that I saw here. And I mentioned earlier that I was watching yesterday evening the 30 for 30 that ESPN put together on the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. It's called Bullies of Baltimore. It was really fun, really well done there by that whole crew. And Trent Dilfer had some very interesting comments today about quarterback play in today's NFL. He said, quote, "The modern day game does not impress me. It's super easy when you don't get hit as a QB and when you can't reroute wide receivers and you can't hit guys across the middle. I love Tom Brady. I love Aaron Rodgers. I love these guys. It's not impressive." Do you agree or disagree?
Well, I think Brady's played in all eras, so I don't know if you could lag that. I mean, if Trent thinks the era he played in was hard, he should have played with Unitas, and he should have played with, Staubach, and he should have played with some of the guys that people don't even give any, love to. I mean, they changed the rule because of Peyton Manning. I mean, Bill Polian complained about the jams, and that's how that rule got changed on illegal contact. But there was a time when you could just mug receivers in the league. Willie Brown could just walk up to a receiver and just kick the shit out of them. I mean, that's why the corners were 6'3". Emmett Thomas and some of these great corners back in the day, they were huge because you could win at the line of scrimmage. That's how great Lance Allworth was. You could literally just beat up people in those receivers back in the day. So I don't disagree that the game has become less contact for the quarterback. I mean, Unitas took so many hits, it was ridiculous. He could have got called. I mean, how many roughing the passer penalties in his career? I mean, it would have been like ridiculous, but that's the game, right? So I just don't know if it was, I mean, I think it's easier now. I don't think it was similar to Brady played. Like, it wasn't that long ago. Rodgers, this whole notion that great players can't play in different eras, to me, is one of the biggest fallacies of all time. Mm-hmm. Like, Sammy Ball could play today, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Roger Staubach would be great today. Unitas would be unbelievable today. Like, we don't even mention Otto Graham. I mean, I talk about Otto Graham in the book. Otto Graham was a basketball player at Northwestern. Pappy Waldorf saw him throwing a football on the intramural field. I mean, he wasn't even the most highly recruited kid in the country coming out. He played basketball, and he talked him into playing football. Guy won like 10 titles. I mean, like, and he's remarkable. Like, and so, like, I think we make a really big mistake of saying that the players today couldn't play. The players of yesterday couldn't play today. Yeah, they could. They would have better nutrition. They would have the rules would help them more. I mean, it would all those things. I mean, like back in the day, the footballs they were throwing looked like balloons. I mean, you watch Cecil LaBelle throw the ball. It looks like he's throwing a fucking balloon. It's so heavy. Looks like a kickball when we were kids in school, you know? And so, like, I think to me, this remember when is the lowest form of conversation. And as Tony Soprano would say, but to me, I think the game has evolved. I don't think you can handicap anybody.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably a fair way to put it. I do, though, want to see, like, what would have happened if we put, like, 1984 Dan Marino in this year's NFL game, and like just what that would look like.
I mean, Dan Marino, it's a great thing to put up. People say, well, you know, Brady didn't need Belichick. You know, Dan Marino went 4 years without making the playoffs with Don Shula, the winningest coach in the history of the game. 4 years.
That's
right?
crazy.
I mean, Marino's great in any era. I mean, Marino's going to be great in any era. I mean, you know, Marino would have played in the 70s. He could have called all his plays. He was so smart. He was quick-minded. He wasn't quick-footed. He was quick-minded. Everybody talked about his release. His release was great, but his fucking mind was the best. He could anticipate throws. I mean, the fact that he went to one Super Bowl his second year in the league and didn't go back again is a crime.
It's crazy.
It's a fucking crime. And a part of it is because you don't build a team around them. There wasn't three elements. It's not that. That's what I keep harping about. Everything was separate, right? You know, and the greatest coach of all time, he didn't have all three things working hand in hand.
It's crazy. Throws probably the prettiest ball, I think, in league history is Dan Marino there. Speaking of Tom Brady, he made the media rounds. His first media appearance since announcing his retirement last week was on the Colin Cowherd show earlier today, and he told Cowherd that he'll be starting his new Fox job in the fall of 2024. So Brady's going to take a little bit of a year off, since he spoke with some of the executives. He wants to put time and energy into other parts of his life, which we commend him on doing that. Hopefully everything goes well. But what do you make of Tom Brady? He's going to take like this gap year here to kind of figure things out.
I think he needs to, right? So look, he what I said before, his family's in Miami, his sons and his kids are in Miami. They go to school there. So for him to just get back on the treadmill of football again, and every weekend you're somewhere else, and you get 2 weeks a month to spend with your kids, I think he probably would nourish his children more by doing that and let Greg Olson have the box for one more year. Why not? And kind of get out of the spotlight a little bit and try to get some normalcy back into his life again. I think it was smart. I mean, I kind of anticipated that. I said it on our show. I said that I thought he would take a year off. I thought that why rush? I mean, if you're not going to play, being a broadcaster is no different than playing. You're going to be gone. In fact, it's harder, right? You're gone 18 weeks of the year to some farm. I mean, rarely are you going to get a home game in Miami. So you're on an airplane. You got to go Friday. You're going to have to go all the time. So, like, what else are we going to do? So I think look, we said this before, Femi. The arm didn't get him. The courage didn't get him. Another injury didn't get him. Family got him. He needed to spend time with his family. And I think he's doing the right thing.
As an aside, did you see the photo that he put on Twitter this morning?
I saw that this morning. A little risque, huh?
What's going on there? But I guess that's
love it. I love it.
When you wake up and you don't have a job anymore, you're retired, and I guess that's what it becomes. Speaking of retirement, AJ Green, the receiver for 12 years, announced his retirement earlier today. Green, 727 career receptions, 10,514 receiving yards, 70 receiving touchdowns. What do you make of AJ Green and his kind of legacy? It's unfortunate that he never really played for any great teams, but at his peak, I thought he was a great player.
It's funny. When I think of AJ Green, I think about what I wrote about in Football Done Right. I wrote about sometimes head coaches that go to different places. I call it my second stint is killing my first, right? So, Hank Stram went from Kansas City. He won a Super Bowl. He went to New Orleans. He was a disaster. George Seifert left San Francisco, went to Carolina. Not good. My second stint is killing my first stint. Like Mike Shanahan went from Denver to Washington, and people only remember his Washington stint. They don't remember how great he was in Denver. So that's kind of where I am with AJ. Like I watched him, and he was not very good in Arizona the last 2 years. I've kind of got to refresh my memory on how good he really was,
Yeah.
That's kind of where I am. I think to me, and that's on me, and I think we all have to do that too, to give more respect to the game, is to go back. Because I do remember him being a number one receiver. He was one of the few number one receivers. But the last 2 years, he was far from, I think he averaged like 6 yards a catch this year.
Yeah, he was a shell of himself.
I mean, it was horrible. It was embarrassing. He shouldn't have played.
Yeah, it was unfortunate because he's a guy, I remember, and it makes me feel old now, because I remember AJ Green when he was in high school, and this guy being like a 5-star recruit, then he goes to Georgia, has an awesome career there, and was a top pick.
I mean, he's a true X receiver. Those are hard to find, where you can line him up and say, okay, you can't take me out of the game. But lately he wasn't that.
No, yeah, but hell of a career though. I don't know if he's going to get to the Hall of Fame. Probably a Ring of Honor guy in the Cincinnati
area. Receivers in the Hall of Fame. I mean, they just there's 8 receivers in the Hall of Fame every year. Oh, just get them in. Come on.
I might go run around at the local high school and see if I can get a gold jacket.
In the Hall of Fame, they traded him he got traded for a kicker. Like, how do you get traded for a kicker and get in the Hall of Fame?
That does it for this week's edition of the podcast, Michael. But we will be back on Thursday. You will be in Arizona, Radio Row. I'm sure you're excited. Have you mapped out the cuisines for Arizona? You know what you're eating when you get down there?
I got to try to get into Bianca Pizzeria. I can't get in there.
Okay.
I'm kind of working on my contacts. Anybody knows anybody? Send us an email, please. I got to try to get in there. I'm dying to get in there.
Can we get the guy a reservation?
Please, just two. I just need a party of 2.
All right, buddy. Safe travels to Arizona, and I'll talk to you later this week. Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.